All right. Well, let's go ahead and diving into things here. So we've got a number of questions, and I've got the list to the side here, and Dr. Mike, Dr. Ash, myself,
Mhm.
we're all going to chime in as we are wanting to. Let's interrupt each other. Not this is really informal little powwow with some of our people and supporters, and I just have to say that I'm really, really grateful to everybody who took the time to come out tonight and join us on this and wants to frankly better themselves, better the community. And we are all in this together right now. It's certainly an beyond interesting time from a health standpoint. And as I've been saying to many patients, and Dr. Mike and I have talked about this, obviously Ash and I as well, but we've got two pandemics going on right now. We've got a pandemic of obviously this coronavirus, and there's certainly questions that exist on that. But we also have a pandemic of fear and anxiety, and I'm seeing that impact everybody, not just those who have coronavirus, obviously, but everybody in this entire community right now because of the impact that has and the impact on stress physiology, how that impacts things. If you didn't see Dr. Ash's latest blog post, went out in our newsletter, make sure you read it.
Load.
It's all about allostatic load, which has to deal with the stress response. She might even talk a little bit more about that. If anybody read that or didn't read it, wants to read it, take a quick peek at it, ask questions now because it's going to be a good time. This time is really about you all. We want it to be that, and we're excited to have you on. So one of the first questions we got was, what supplements are best to be using during this time to boost our immunity? And we've talked about this on some Facebook Lives that we've done, but I'm going to throw a few out there. Chime in, Dr. Mike, Ash, and fill in some others. But some of the main ones that we've been using in our office have been colostrum, glutathione, vitamin C, zinc, vitamin D. And so, I want to talk briefly about a couple of those things. I pointed out glutathione in a couple of different ones. There's numerous different glutathione supplements that I use. I use a liposomal version, though. Liposomal is in a fat-soluble form. It's going to just get in and be more bioavailable for the body to utilize than many other forms of glutathione. Arguably, intravenous glutathione would be amazing. We today, right now, don't have that ability in our office. Dr. Mike has been working hard on being able to pull in some other really cool tools for the office that way. So at some point, we are going to be having IV glutathione available, IV vitamin C, which has been being utilized in various parts of the country for coronavirus and has shown some very positive results also.
I think there's a study out of China, or a couple studies out of China, that showed incredible effects from IV vitamin C.
And they've been using it some in New York and some of the other, hotbeds for the infection as well. So, vitamin C. Go ahead, Dr. Mike.
No, I didn't want to, but you're right. I mean, I know that part of the protocol in New York with looking at the hydroxychloroquine, et cetera, includes IV vitamin C, 1,500 milligrams every 8 hours as a great potent antioxidant, and hopefully also to help with the cytokine storm issues with things too. So, and then you can continue with the other ones. But yeah, the vitamin C is big. And most of my patients know for many years I've been a strong proponent of zinc during influenza season and any viral season. And I think people get tired of me saying, wash your hands, drink your water, and take your zinc. But the funny thing is that even tonight, when President Trump did his talk, he mentioned hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, and zinc for the first time. And I was really kind of psyched about that. So I know there's different forms of zinc. Some of them get better absorbed. Some of them can upset your stomach. Certainly when we're talking about it, we're talking, 50 milligrams, if not more, which is well above the RDA. Maybe you guys can discuss, and Dr. Ashley can discuss that more. Typically, the zinc picolinate is the one that tends to get the best absorbed, but it's different for different people. So when it comes to those are definitely the ones that we always talk about. And then there's, like you said, the glutathione, the vitamin D, and even some of the immunoglobulin type of supplements, which you may address.
Yeah. So, you know, zinc, we've got a few different zinc supplements at our office. Like, you know, we have all of these supplements at the office because we all take them ourselves. We try to keep our immune system up. You know, a lot of the staff, docs, we're all doing that. And so I have it there for me. And, you know, also for obviously all of our patients, because we want to be keeping everybody healthy and we know and trust what it's doing. And at the end of the day, the different ones work differently for different people. I take 60 milligrams of zinc myself personally right now in this time, just prophylactically trying to help be preventing things. And I'm taking colostrum every day, or it's a form of the immunoglobulins that Dr. Mike was just referencing there. And there's a number of different ones that we utilize at the office that are immunoglobulin-based supports. But immunoglobulins are immune proteins. These are powerful tools that our body utilizes to help mitigate infections and be boosting a natural immune response, kind of equipping your body's artillery and arsenal to be able to deal with these infections that we might be coming into contact with. And another supplement that I was referencing in a most recent Facebook Live talk was, it's called Transfer Factor Multi-Immune. There's a mushroom, one that has mushrooms in it and one that is mushroom-free. I tend to use the mushroom-free because certain mushrooms with different people, they do react to them. But, you know, that's increasing natural killer cell function in the body as well. And natural killer cells are doing kind of just what they sound like. They're helping to kill off, you know, pathogens that are coming into us. And so another great way of mounting a powerful immune response and really having your body's defenses be at the ready for whatever it might be coming into contact with. So
I think we'd also be remiss to not discuss our terrain, the internal environment, sort of our host environment, if you will. We, you know, about 80% of our immune system is actually held in the gut. So we really need to be focused on really supporting the gut. So that could be just a simple probiotic. Supplementation can work wonders right now, but also you think about what are the other factors that are going to improve the health of the gut. You know, eating a lower sugar diet. Sugar is probably the worst enemy of your immune system function on the face of the planet. So watching your sugar intake, eating good nutrient-dense foods that are not going to be inflammatory. So even, you know, if you have a food sensitivity or things like gluten and dairy can be particularly inflammatory. And obviously if you're sensitive to other things, even good bone broth is going to be super nourishing to the gut environment. We just actually put a post up on prebiotics. You know, probiotics get all of the glory and all of the show here, but prebiotics are food. They're fibers. They're foods for our probiotic bacteria. They're going to nourish the already good microbes in your gut. So prebiotic supplementation could be important for some people. And just like a side note, you know, if you have gut issues and you know you might or consider yourself perhaps a candidate for leaky gut, that could be a missing link oftentimes, the prebiotic supplementation. So, you know, we could talk about the gut for several hours tonight, but
we're not going to.
We're not. But I had to throw that in there, even if you just want to add a probiotic to your list. Just understand that the gut-associated lymphoid tissue is right beyond the enterocyte layer of your gut. Like you eat, and that food is going to, you know, be broken down and go through the one cell layer thick in your gut, the enterocyte layer, and just beyond that is that really where the immune system, majority of the immune system is housed. So we really want to nourish that gut as much as we can during this time.
And actually, let me take that a couple steps beyond that too, Ashley, because that's exactly, a very important part. Keeping your gut microbiome in a balance is huge. And, we all love the fact that we're all running out to the liquor store or whatever. Well, actually, we're not running out to the liquor store right now, but
In Delaware,
yeah. Well, then you get pulled over down there, so that's not good. But either which way, a little bit of alcohol is great. Certainly helps to relax you, settle down that fear, that fight or flight type of anxiety type of stuff. But too much alcohol then actually helps to destroy that single layer that Dr. Ashley's talking about with the endothelial cell. And when that happens, you just open the door.
I just said I don't drink. I forgot about talking.
Yeah. Well, that's just yeah. So, I mean, so there's goods and bads, and then the other things like you're talking about too is I'll bring in how sleep. I'll say sleep as a supplement, mainly because if you're not getting your proper sleep, your cytokines are made and released and balanced at that time, as well as, like Dr. Ashley's talked about, and Dr. Kevin, don't want to forget him, talk about with regards to, just that keeping the cortisol levels down and keeping that stress levels down, and all the other neuromodulators, the other things that are going on inside your body during the sleep when you're recharging yourself, you're recharging your immune system. It's such a vital time. In your gut, it basically works its most because it's part of this thing called the parasympathetic nervous system, works its most during sleep. So, working those things together is very important. So, what we're talking about with those supplements ties into some of the other things that you're hearing us all talk about with washing hands, proper sleep, doing the exercising, etc.
Yeah.
And I think that we talked, or you mentioned it briefly, Kevin, but the idea of allostatic load, which is really the sum total of all the stressors that come at our body on it at any given time. So, obviously lack of sleep is going to contribute to the allostatic load. Eating a not great diet, drinking excessive alcohol, that's all going to contribute to the allostatic load and the stress burden on the body. But we also can't forget factors like, again, food sensitivities. We don't think about those, but they do create stress on the body. Pathogens and infections that might be underlying in the body that we haven't identified yet, nutrient deficiencies, all these things really that we look at, and our functional medicine and integrative medicine work collectively as docs at the clinic, those all can contribute even to your overall immune function. I've seen a lot of, functional medicine doctors right now discussing, well, I have chronic Lyme disease. Am I more at risk for COVID-19 because I've got chronic Lyme, or I've got, rheumatoid arthritis and XYZ, all these autoimmune diseases? How does that impact me as far as immune function? And we can't, people with lung issues and cardiovascular issues and pre-existing conditions like that seem to be more susceptible to COVID, but we can't forget some of these other underlying conditions that do impact the overall stress on the body. When we have this huge allostatic burden, our immune system is suppressed and it's not going to be functioning fully.
Yeah. And one of the things that was brought up in a couple of different questions was basically about sleep. And a lot of people right now are having altered sleep, or they're not necessarily waking up rested. And it is this balance between hormones once again. And so the stress physiology is fascinating. And if you want a really good book to read about stress physiology, it's called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. I forget the guy's name who wrote it. It's on the tip of my tongue.
Professor at Stanford.
Yeah, I believe it's Stanford. And super smart dude, amazing book. Makes it easy to read or listen to about stress physiology, but it's amazing what stress does to the body. And we are in in this country as a whole in a chronic fight or flight sympathetic response, and we're not sleeping
on
well.
normal days. And now we add a crisis to it, so we're
It's that
just a
much
hot
more.
mess.
And, when we're waking up not feeling well, we're not feeling rested at all, we're having salt cravings, we're waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning every morning, mind racing, all the anxiety symptoms are heightened, etc. That's an indication that there's an alteration between how some of the cortisol, melatonin rhythms might be working in the body. Cortisol and melatonin go in what's called a diurnal rhythm during the day and night. And so cortisol, which is one of the main hormones produced by the adrenal glands, little walnut-sized glands sitting above the kidneys, it's one of the main stress hormones. It's what most people think of when it comes to hormones that regulate a stress response. And it starts high in the morning and is supposed to taper down as the day goes on. It's what's supposed to have you wake up bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to go. And then as the day goes on, you're winding down. Melatonin is in an opposite spot. It's low in the morning, and then it goes up as the day goes on to help prepare you to be able to fall asleep and ultimately stay asleep. And that difference between cortisol and melatonin it's a critical margin there between those two curves on a graph. And so if we're having changes with that, our stress response is heightened, and so our cortisol curve maybe bounces up, and now all of a sudden the distance between is not as it's supposed to be. That's something to be paying attention to. And so cortisol, melatonin balance right now, we need good sleep. Sleep hygiene is critical. Dr. Mike, you were referencing, why sleep is important to an extent with, that parasympathetic upregulation, and our sleep is where our body's healing itself. But what are some practical tips for good sleep hygiene? Well, the first thing is staying on these, blue light producing devices after dark, the way it is right now. It's really not ideal. Blue light distorts melatonin production. It's known and well documented.
Pick up a pair of blue light blocking glasses if you want to be on a device at night. I know there's different apps that you can install that will theoretically shield some of the blue light coming from.
I don't really trust that.
But ideally, you look at even just civilization, it's relatively new that we have all these artificial lights. Typically we had really great circadian rhythms throughout history because we arose and went to bed with the sun. And so, theoretically, we should be dimming the lights in our home as the sun's going down to help our body naturally produce that melatonin. Even considering things like blackout curtains, the temperature of your sleep environment. We have a blog about that as well. If you're sleeping, ideal sleep temperature is actually 65 degrees Fahrenheit. That's pretty chilly. Mm-hmm. Hard to achieve in the summertime. So we have some strategies for that as well, but that also really helps modulate and correct circadian rhythm. There's a lot of wonderful adaptogenic herbs out there. If you are having trouble sleeping or just having trouble with stress at all, adaptogenic means it's a lot of people think it's like an adrenal and a stress thing. I like to think of it more as like brain herbs. It helps your brain and your body kind of modulate all the stressors that come at us throughout the day. Ashwagandha, rhodiola, holy basil. So those are some examples of Siberian ginseng. Those are some adaptogenic herbs that are going to help your body and your brain modulate to stress. Supplementing with melatonin, I've always been on the fence with it, because if you supplement too much with melatonin, it can negatively, your brain's feedback loop is it's going to shunt your body's ability to be able to produce that.
I think there's a time and a place for it.
There is a time and a place. Just be aware that can happen. Obviously getting good sleep is imperative right now. So if you need to take melatonin, I'm not saying not to, but just know down the line, it can impact your body's own ability to make it.
And guys, and this is should be sort of a no-brainer. Let's not forget the effect of exercise. Okay, exercise is so important to help you control, giving you the difference between physiologic stress and non-physiologic stress, so that you're not always, your body starts to learn how to adapt to those adrenaline surges. It helps you to sleep better when you can exercise on a regular basis, getting that aerobic metabolism going, etc. And that's obviously very, very important. And the other part I'll say is, there are certainly people out there that have problem with sleeping, and they should come talk to us if they are, not just because of taking a supplement, etc. But let's not forget about restless leg syndrome and sleep apnea and all these other issues. Off to the side, I just, we're talking so much about COVID and all this kind of stuff right now, but I don't want us to always forget that we all have chronic medical illnesses that need to be addressed, and they play into so much of what's happening with our immune systems. Ashley, you made the comment about sugar being so bad. Well, why do you think diabetics are such a high risk for COVID mortality? Not just morbidity, but mortality right now. And that's a big part of it too. So let's not forget about, taking care of our general health and our chronic medical conditions and the things that can affect those other things in the immune system, in your overall mental health and overall well-being too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I oftentimes will go into even just talking about how melatonin is made in the body in terms of neurotransmitter production and where it comes from. I mean, if you're diabetic, if you're having altered blood sugar handling in any way, if you're having, lack of protein intake in your diet, if you're anemic, if you're deficient in B3, 6, 9, 12, magnesium, you can't make that well. And so, these are all critical things. You have to have the raw ingredients to bake the cake at the end of the day. And if you don't have the raw ingredients there, you're not going to be able to necessarily do that. And so if you're not sleeping well, getting labs drawn to be looking at that. I know people are not wanting to be going out. We are supposed to be social distancing and staying away and only going out for essential things. And I agree with that. I would also argue that sleep is essential. And so if you're not sleeping well and you've tried some of these other things, you're going to bed at the right time, your room's not kept at 78 degrees, and the room's blacked out, and you're doing all of that stuff, then I think that it could be an important piece to go to a lab and get some labs drawn, as long as you're taking, once again, the right measures to keep yourself safe. I know that a couple of people have also asked about mask usage, and I did a little instructional video on our Facebook page yesterday on how to put on N95 style mask and how to safely be removing it. But a lot of people are using cloth masks right now as well, and only have either one or two of the N95s laying around because you can't find them anywhere. And, medical practitioners are obviously taking priority in terms of acquiring them from companies. But been asked kind of, how do we keep those clean? How do we sanitize them properly? I was doing a little bit of looking on that, and I don't know if you have any comments on that, Dr. Mike, jump in, but the CDC actually recently put out a link to what their recommendations are as far as sanitizing masks. And the homemade cloth ones, from what I understand, washing it like you would your underwear is what was noted on the one website. Change it every day. If it's soiled, you want to change it. And so you are laundering that and
you're concerned
doing that daily.
To have some extra antimicrobial action. If you have thyme essential oil, is a strong antiviral. If you're really concerned about making sure that they're not, taking hold of viruses and inhabiting the masks, you could also use On Guard and Thieves are two really popular antimicrobial blends. You could put a couple drops in with your normal laundry detergent that are going to help if you feel like you want to get extra antimicrobial, antiviral activity in that cleaning cycle.
Yeah, I mean, I have I won't put it on, but I have an N95, and it's meant to be disposable. I mean, that's the whole point of it, is to do it. Now, I have a really good friend that sewed up a couple of these cloth ones, and as long as you're covering up your your respiratory droplets, your nose, your mouth, etc. And it's a little harder when somebody has a beard. That's what some of those people will talk about as well. But just like washing your hands, and with normal soap and water, washing your hands is adequate to get the virus off of the skin so it can't attach and penetrate. That's the same thing with this. So if you do have any respiratory droplets of your own getting into the mask, or unfortunately somebody sneezes around you and it goes on the outside, you take that off, you throw it in the washing machine, you wash your hands before you touch anything on your face, and normal soap and water routine or a normal wash cycle is adequate to take that virus off. Viruses are pretty wimpy, generally speaking, outside of the host. So yeah, this is a tough one because it seems to stay on surfaces longer. But if it doesn't attach to something or penetrate the endothelial cell lining, like Dr. Ashley's talking about, the respiratory tract, which is also a single cell lining, etc. If it doesn't do that, it's going to die on its, well, technically viruses don't die because they're not alive, but it's going to be killed before it can really infect anybody.
Yeah, viruses need a host, period.
Yeah.
So if they hijack your own cells to be able to replicate and go about their jobs. So they're not truly living, although they kind of are. It's one of those weird kind of organisms. But at the end of the day, even an N95 style mask, the CDC has put out suggestions on ways of perhaps cleansing them. It's thought that the virus can probably live on one of those style masks for about 3 to 4 days. And so if you have multiple ones of them and you're able to, have one sit to the side in a bag and let it sit there for 4 days, in theory, anything that may have been on it is going to be dead on its own and no longer a threat. Hydrogen peroxide has been talked about, being vaporized and utilized in and around it. Ultraviolet light has been talked about with that to help kill things off. A lot of home HVAC units have ultraviolet lights that people put into them to help kill off molds and other things that are traveling through the air. And so, viruses and bacteria are oftentimes listed as agents that are killed off by those ultraviolet lights. And so even exposing things to ultraviolet light could arguably be helping to sterilize any masks that you might have as well.
Just don't use ultraviolet light on your hands for too long. I heard people, they were thinking about doing that, and then you start to open up the door for skin cancers and things like that. So we're not sterilizing our body parts with ultraviolet light, okay?
Good distinction there. Thank you, John.
We've heard some really dumb things. People cleaning their produce with bleach. We've heard people out of the blue going and taking chloroquine tablets because they saw it on the news and it's from the aquarium store and they died, and etc. So just, sometimes the simplest things to us or everybody should be made with some common sense.
Yeah. Common sense is an important nutrient in this whole thing as well.
Yeah.
And what I would say is this, the outside of the mask is, if something is coming towards you, like handling that, you don't want to be touching with dirty hands, obviously, on the inside of your mask when you're taking on and off. There is an appropriate way. You've got ear loops on most homemade ones, like pull it off and pull it away. Don't be touching the front or the back of it. There's no reason to. Use the elastic and be touching that only as you go and set it to the side, especially if you're pulling it fresh out of the laundry. It's the same thing. How do I apply this? You just come out of the store and you want to take it off because you don't feel like driving with it to go home. Great. I'm going to take the elastic off and I'm going to set it over into this bag to the side here to launder when I get home. Whatever it might be, I think that's an important way of taking on and taking off masks to minimize that. And bottom line, you still should be washing your hands before and after putting on and taking off a mask, period.
Same thing with the gloves, Kevin. I don't know if you talked about this with the gloves too. Okay. So if you are going to use gloves, and I know that there's controversies with it, especially when you're going grocery shopping, etc. You got to remember that, it's a second skin. So if you're going to take the glove off, you basically want to pull the one side off, ball it up inside your other hand, okay, and slip your finger underneath of it and invert the other glove so that your skin is still touches the same skin, and then dispose that right away, and then go and wash your hands right afterwards too.
Yeah, it's bottom line, so that as you pull the one glove off, the other one's inside.
Right.
You're not ever touching any contaminated exterior surface.
Right.
You pull that second glove off and around, and it's contained in a little ball with a clean surface on the outside now.
And wash your hands quickly, because some of these gloves still do contain talc, and there's a lot of people that have problems with talc and etc. But again, it's all about keeping that protective area with regards to your hands and nothing touching your face.
Yeah. Now, I think a question that kind of fits into the same category here is it necessary to decontaminate groceries and other objects that we bring into our homes? And if so, what would be the proper way to do that?
Well, I kind of just talked about it. Don't spray it with a bleach or any kind of cleaner. You just don't want to do that, certainly to your produce. Basically, when you bring it into the house, you're going to wash it like you would with any other type of a produce. Don't stick it out in the garage. You don't need to let it sit out there for 3 days or what have you. The food will get bad. Rodents will come into the garage, whatever. There's all kinds of issues with regards to that too. And any boxes that you're handling, make sure that you go and wash your hands after you handle those boxes as well. Some places are actually even telling people not to use their reusable Wegmans bags, etc., unless you're washing them in between. So it's actually, this may be one of the few times where I say use the plastic throwaway ones or recyclable. Well, they're not recyclable, are they? The plastic bags and use them so that you can dispose of them rather than having to worry about the contaminants.
Yeah, I know a lot of stores aren't even allowing you to bring them in and
Yeah.
at all. But I'll say for myself, if I'm just going to say, Amazon drops something off at my house, I'm opening up the box outside. That's just me.
Mm-hmm.
The box is sitting on my front porch already. I open it there. I set the contents inside onto an area, allow them to be wiped off there, and I just walk. I never even bring the box into my house. I just walk it around to the side, stick it in my recycling bin, wash my hands after. Same thing, if you're concerned about, I'm watching everybody at Wegmans or whatever grocery store I might be at, they've got their gloves on, they're grabbing the cart, they grab all of their things, throw it in, and I think everybody thinks that it's okay then because they had gloves on. And the reality is we have no idea what the stockers used, how they did that. Like, cross-contamination happens on all of these things. And depending on the surface, I mean, this virus can live on different kinds of surfaces for some pretty lengthy periods at this point. And so, in my opinion, forget the gloves at the grocery store to an extent. That's me. My opinion, professional.
Or wear one.
Yeah. What I've been doing.
That's what I did the one time I went to the grocery store. And it's like, you really have to be very cognizant of what your gloved hand is touching and what your other hand is touching. But
you still need to wipe things off, and you still need to wash your hands, period. Okay.
Yeah.
Wipe off the packages and wash your hands. That's all.
I've actually had a couple emails about the veggie wash in my book. I have just a simple homemade veggie wash, and I think, I still use it like I do I wash my produce as I typically would. So, again, like, viruses typically aren't super hardy. If you're washing something well, hopefully it'll be okay. There's no peer-reviewed articles behind my veggie spray, so, I can't guarantee anything, but it's what I'm doing. That's my personal thing. If that's something,
we're all feeling healthy here.
But yeah, I've had several questions about that, so I figured if anyone was curious about that, I would bring it up.
Yeah.
And just, I mean, and there's been absolutely no documented cases of anybody getting COVID from food sources. So, I think it would just, again, be food smart and like you guys are saying, I think that's fine. I think the big thing is really more distancing in the grocery store. Making sure that you've got your list. You're the only person. You don't need to bring the whole crew with you when you're going there. Get in, get out. Swipe with a card. Don't use cash if you can avoid it, just because it can stay on. Still be exchanging things between people as much as possible. So, and if you see something, don't go picking through all the different cucumbers. Oh wait, this one feels better, etc. Let's just pick one and that's that. So let's go.
Yeah, there we go. No, I think that's good. So next question. This one's a little bit lengthy, and I think it's a fantastic question, though. It says, I keep hearing people say that once you've had COVID-19 and cleared it, you build up an immunity and are okay, kind of like the measles or chickenpox, something like that. However, once past the 14-day quarantine and that person feels better, isn't it true that the same person could possibly pick up the virus on their hands and still pass it along to somebody else? Hence the continued need to keep washing your hands and social distancing. So I think just trying to understand, are you still able to be a carrier of the virus if you've had it and are past the infection on your own?
Is that a question for me?
Sure, you can feel that one to start.
Well, the problem here is that they've already documented about 8 subgroups of SARS-CoV-2, which is technically the virus that causes COVID disease. And different people respond to the different subgroups accordingly. Some people get very, very mild disease, as you've heard, if any. You've got the asymptomatic carriers. You've got the pre-symptomatic carriers. And then you have the people that have all the wide ranges of everything. 14 days is generally thought of as a rule of thumb of being the length of time for viral shedding. And that's basically why they use that number as a point of contact. Isolate for 14 days. And if you don't have any problems at 14 days, then you should be fine. Yes, I would say to you that, the virus still lives on surfaces. And while you yourself should not be able to get illness, although possibly get another subtype, which is why they're having such a tough time with the vaccine. But you still are possible carrier to spread it. And that's the reason, again, washing your hands frequently, social distancing, and even the healthcare workers that are going back to work still are putting all PPE on, all the personal protective equipment, disposing of it appropriately, etc., so that they're not giving it to someone who may come in with symptoms but tests negative, and oh no, now they just got touched by this person, etc. So I would say that the smarter thing is obviously to still continue with these precautions until they understand this virus a little bit more about how it's living, etc. But it just means that it's not going to infect that person after they've had the antibody response of the illness and recovery.
Yeah.
That makes sense? That makes sense?
Yeah, no, it did to me at least. But I think that one of the things about this virus is it's being called a novel coronavirus. It's new. We don't know a lot about it yet. We don't have a lot of articles and research that has been published to know and understand its exact qualities and traits. And that's one of the things about viruses is they constantly shift, morph, and change as well. And so that's why the flu is, back every single year. And there's, hundreds and hundreds of strains of the flu, and why the flu vaccine changes every year as well, because they're kind of frankly guessing at which strains they think are going to be likely the most prevalent and throw that into the mix for the coming year. And it's viruses morph and change, and we just don't know a lot about this one yet and how a person's immune system completely responds. And that's where even some of the other therapies that are starting to be utilized, like the hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin and things like that, we don't have peer-reviewed, double-blinded, placebo-controlled trials utilizing these things yet. However, there are some interesting research that has been done where some patients have been responding very favorably to some of those interventions as well, despite not having gold standard research existing out there for it yet.
Okay. Do you want me to talk a little bit about this there? I mean, I don't want everybody to think that they should go out and go get hydroxychloroquine either. I mean, it's a tough drug. It's a medicine that is used for a lot of autoimmune illnesses. And although it's technically an anti-inflammatory, it's not an anti-inflammatory like ibuprofen and your Advils and things. It can cause cardiomyopathy. It can cause heart problems. It can cause bone marrow suppression. So while you're taking it, you could actually knock down your immune system even more, and especially your white blood cells, which is your main, the T killer cells that Kevin's talking about, the T helper cells, where the cytokines come from that actually help out with fighting all this illness, etc. So it's really, I would say to you, don't jump on that bandwagon yet, although I would rather err on the side of catching something early than late. And so there's data that we need to get, but at the same time, it is more promising and much more available for the general public. Azithromycin is everybody knows is a Z-Pak, and essentially that's being used more as the secondary bacterial pneumonia that happens with this disease, kind of like pink eye. Everybody gets pink eye. We all know that's really a virus because we touched our eyes and our kids were, running noses, and we, quickly took care of their nose and oops, I accidentally moved my glasses and now I got pink eye. So pink eye is a virus, and we use an antibiotic eye drop to prevent the secondary corneal ulceration that can happen because of the viral infection. So the azithromycin is really more as a supportive thing to the hydroxychloroquine in the face of the pulmonary fibrosis and that cascade that's occurring. The bigger problem with COVID is the cytokine storm issue, and that's not what these medicines are addressing. So that's big. There's actually just a report literally today. There's an investigational drug that sounds very promising because it's actually stopping the virus from attaching to respiratory epithelial cells. So kind of what we were just talking about. And if we can do that, since it is a respiratory droplet, airborne type of an illness, if we can do that, then that's going to be much more effective than hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin and zinc, vitamin C, etc. Although those are obviously all good for general health, but there's other things, and even the antiviral medicine that they've been talking about as well, which they found effect against Ebola. They're trying to use it here. And you can see they're not really talking about it too much because number one, it's wicked expensive, and B, number two, they just don't know. So, I think, again, prevention is by far and away the most important thing with regards to this. And if you do come down with early symptoms or concerns, Dr. Kevin and I are available. We can do telemedicine. We can talk to you about it, etc. And if you're one of my patients and we really say, listen, we're going to go for hydroxychloroquine, it's fine. It's a prescription medicine. Don't try and buy it at the pet store. But etc. And we will take care of things appropriately and talk you through it. Sort of like we call informed consent, right? So you don't want to just take a pill for taking a pill because they said it was good on television. And everybody's body is different, and everybody's metabolism although there's generalities, but everybody's metabolism is a little bit different too. Giving hydroxychloroquine to somebody with something called G6PD deficiency would basically kill them. So let's be smart about some of this stuff.
Yeah, no, great points for sure. Let me see here. I know we had a question here about blood pressure, have an at-home monitor. Heard they usually read higher than at the doctor's office. So I'll say this, Rick, that, when it comes to blood pressure monitors, how accurate they are, I don't know. Everyone's different. Every single machine is different. And so some of them are spot on, some of them aren't. And so that can be tough.
How about this? Let me comment on that, because that's one that I get all the time. Okay, so number one, you always want to make sure that you have a properly fitting cuff. Okay,
Yep.
and the cuff should always be the upper arm cuff. Okay, these wrist cuffs and some of these other ones, they have a built-in fudge factor to adapt to the normal change in blood pressure as the arterial pulse goes down the circuit. So as your blood pressure as your blood travels down through the artery, it actually rises as it goes down. So you're going to have a higher number with a wrist reading than with a cuff reading. And that's the other reason why we always have different sizes in the office. Now, you know as well as I do, if we sit down with one of those things, you're going to get a reading, and then you're going to say, oh, I don't like that reading. You'll press the button, wait a couple seconds, and then you're going to get another one, and it's going to be 20 points off, okay? So I always tell my patients, bring your machine into the office. We'll check it against the mercury sphygmomanometer, and then we can coordinate what the, quote-unquote accuracy and precision of that is. Now, there are definitely better ones out there than others, just like anything. Some of it's you pay for what you get what you pay for. How's that? Okay. And in the hospitals, I can tell you almost every single hospital uses an Omron, OMRON device. That is their big one. I know there's one called ANDs. You can go to CVS and buy their brand as well, which really stinks personally. But anyway, that's off to the side. Okay. I hope that nobody works for CVS out there. But and just make sure that you work with your doctor on that. So we'll see how that is. A lot of times it can be as simple as replacing the batteries. Those things gobble up battery energy so fast. So if you're using them with a battery, first thing you're going to do is you're going to change the batteries or try and plug it into the outlet, the AC outlet. That's a good one. Okay.
Yeah. So, taking on your right arm versus your left arm, sitting, standing, all of these things have an influence on what your blood pressure is going to be too. And so
time of day, just like you were talking about, Dr. Kevin, cortisol levels change during the course of the day, and time of day makes a difference with regards to blood pressure. So, I always tell my patients to make a diary, make a log, write down the time of day, write down which arm it was as well. And those two are very important. And by the way, did I just eat? Did I just exercise? What's my heart rate? I'm sorry, but it's not quite that simple as a Fitbit, and it says, okay, my heart rate's 64, so I'm doing good today.
Yeah, no, totally. And, I think that's where that whole white coat syndrome comes in, right? Everybody's blood pressure goes up 30 points because they're walking into a doctor's office. Well, it's a stress response, right? And I had horrible well, we don't have horrible traffic right now because nobody's driving. But, if there's horrible traffic or, I almost get in an accident on my way there, like my reading is not going to be accurate at all, or reflective of what's truly going on because it was a stress response. And so bottom line, bring it in. We're happy to be coordinating that for you.
Yeah.
And
the good news is that you won't be waiting an hour to see the doctor in my office because we're right on time. But you go to the other offices, you're sitting there for an hour. Oh my God, I've got another meeting to go to, and there's another stress response. How's that?
What other questions do we have? I think I went through the list. I hope I didn't miss anybody's. I didn't see any emails come through, so nobody was shooting an email that way unless it went to the spam. What other questions do we have? I've been on for almost an hour at this point, and so I want to also be reflective, or excuse me, respectful of other people's time. I did have a patient today ask one thing about, because there's more time on everybody's hands right now, about what are some maybe immune boosting things I could plant in my garden that might be helpful. So I'll let Dr. Ash take a second and comment on a couple of specific things for that. Don't have to go through a ton, but mention a few.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things that you can plant. I would say the most bang for your buck, so to speak, would be something like echinacea. It's also known as purple coneflower. So it kind of almost looks like a black-eyed Susan with purple petals, if you're not familiar. It's actually pretty widely, you see it a lot in this area of the United States. The whole plant can be used. It's really supportive of the immune system function. It increases white blood cells, really helpful with colds and flus, and just really a lot of things that you could be, exposed to. So that's a really great one. The root is probably the most concentrated with like the immune supporting properties, but they're perennial, so they'll come back. We've lived in our home for 4 years, 4 summers. I planted some from seed, and they've just grown, and they're really lovely. So you kind of put them in and forget about them. And if you ever, want to drink some tea or, use them for immune supporting, or you can go to the store and we have echinacea at the office, I'm sure, echinacea tinctures and pills and things like that. That's a great one. I also love elderberry. It is also really easy to grow, and you can use elderberry in lots of culinary applications. But, I did a Facebook Live a few days ago about elderberry syrup and its immune modulating and immune supporting effects, and how it just can prevent and shorten the duration of colds and flus and things like that. And so that's a good one. It grows quickly.
It's prolific.
It is prolific. If you have a friend that has one, we might just be at the end of the window, but you can cut off a little twig and propagate it too. So it's easy to come by. Garlic is a good one. Another really powerful antimicrobial. It stimulates natural killer cell function and other immune cell functions. A lot of
Ashley too. If you go, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think if you go to like most of the garden centers, I think echinacea is also called coneflower, isn't it? So a lot of times you go in there and you have this 17-year-old kid that works there and has no idea when you come in and say, where's the echinacea plant? So if you ask for coneflower, I think you'll find it. And I love to grow lavender, because lavender is such a soothing and calming type of a thing too. And that's also pretty easy to grow too.
Right, and it helps with the stress response. And if we're stressed, our immune system's going to be suppressed. Along those lines, ashwagandha and holy basil are pretty easy to grow. I grow holy basil every year. Those are both adaptogenic herbs, like I had mentioned at the beginning. They're going to help with also like mental clarity. Holy basil does have some actual immune supporting properties, but they're adaptogenic. They're going to help your body modulate to stress, which in turn will impact so much of your physiology. So those would be some big ones. Obviously, like your sage, your rosemary, your thyme, they all have really great health promoting benefits too. And obviously they're wonderful and flavorful, but also super antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory. So those are some good ones.
What other questions or comments are there? Anything else? We're going to we'll stay on for a little bit more here if anyone else has any other questions, but we're going to plan to do this again. So if everybody's open to it, we'll keep your guys' names on an email list. We'll keep you posted on when the next one is, and give us feedback. Honestly, like, I know pretty much every single person on this call here. And so if you can, or you've got concerns or questions or comments about how this has gone, please feel free to let me know that. We want to learn and grow from this. And, if we need to use a different platform, I'm happy to do that as well, whether Zoom or something else. So give us feedback. We want to help you all in the best way possible. So
another question: do you use anything to flush out nose sinuses after you've been out in public?
I mean, from my standpoint, basically, it's almost the same thing as washing your hands. Sure, you can use a saline rinse. I mean, that's fine. You don't have to go full tilt and use an neti pot or any of these other types of things. As long as when you use a saline spray and you blow your nose, you throw that tissue out right away, and then you go wash your hands again too. I don't know that it's so much attaching to the respiratory epithelium up there, because inside your nostril you have all these little hairs, and those hairs catch that, and usually it'll get stuck in the mucus inside your nose, the virus, and that can't attach to a human cell. So as long as the virus can't attach to the human cell, it's not going to infect you. It's more those respiratory droplets that you might accidentally inhale in, or if you're touching your face, etc., it kind of gets in there, and then you swallow, and you boom, it's inside, and now you're in trouble. So that kind of thing. But I mean, this time of year, I tell most of my patients, and I'm sure you guys do too, is with the allergies and the pollens and everything else, using a saline spray when you come in from outside is always a good idea. And also just before you go to bed at nighttime, just so that you're not snoring and waking up your partner. No, just so that you're clearing out your nose, okay?
I think it's also just super important to make sure you're adequately hydrated too, because that's when your mucous membranes functioning and hydrated so that they can help you defend against whatever you're in contact with.
One of the things you all have been hearing about this is barriers, right? We've got barriers in our body, our gut barrier, our respiratory barrier, we've got in our lungs and in our sinuses, and then, you know, in our brain, we've got a blood-brain barrier. Barrier integrity is critical, and you know, everything we can be doing to support it is important, and it really comes down to lifestyle choices so frequently. The health of the host, I've said this so many times in so many spots, but you know, a mosquito doesn't come to water, you know, and make the water stagnant. It comes because the water is stagnant. The health of the host, what you're choosing to do day in and day out, is driving susceptibility so frequently to any kind of bug and organism, not just coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2. Okay. And so the hydration, the food, the sleep, the appropriate stress response, the proper hygiene, that's all the things that you need to be doing to help support yourselves in this time.
And then stabilizing those chronic medical conditions. So you don't you let your diabetes run out of control because you're home and, oh man, I got those Twinkies over there and I'm going to go do that. So keeping those things in control, just like you're saying, keeping the host as balanced and basic as possible is huge.
There was no ice cream at the store when I was there the other day. I wasn't looking for myself. I just noticed there was no ice cream there. So yeah, I mean, everybody's going to be coming out of this with diabetes if they didn't have it before. From what I've seen at the grocery store, we can help with that too.
There's lots of produce.
Yeah. There was tons of radishes. Trust me, there was plenty of radishes there.
Radishes.
Oh my.
But yeah, I think the key thing with everybody is you know, keep on top of it. I think Rick made a comment about knowledge is power, and that is just being aware, being abreast of everything, being on top of things, and being informed. Stay informed and use a little common sense with some of this stuff is going to be the key. You know, and you know, all the data out there is data, and until they actually figure it out, let's be smart right now.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, the news really isn't changing a whole lot every day. Stressing most people out tremendously. So do yourself a favor and turn it off. You don't need to dwell on it constantly. It's really not changing much. Try to be healthy. Enjoy your loved ones that you might be with, and continue to foster good relationships with people. So we were meant for community. We were designed for community, and social isolation is not inherently there. And I know not everybody has family right with them in their home or close by. So make sure that you're doing things like this, connecting with other people face to face, even if it's via a screen and talking, it's critical. So make sure you're doing that as well.
Yeah, turn the freaking news off, okay? Just unless you really like numbers and you're some actuarial or something like that, and you want to see what numbers are throwing out there, the numbers are lagging behind the human element, and the human element is so much more important than how they're reporting things out there right now. I just, let's be smart, be safe. They're right. Let's be smart, be safe, be strong, and be well, and stay home.
Yeah. I know there's at least one actuary on, but for everybody else, don't worry about the numbers. No, that's great. All right. Well, I appreciate it. I'm not sure if there are any other questions. If not, I hope everybody has an awesome rest of the week and look forward to hopping on next week. We might pick a topic, something to discuss, because to be honest, I don't know that everybody wants to hear about COVID every time we get on. I don't honestly feel like talking about COVID every time. If there's some important updates, then we'll certainly address that. But we might pick some other great topics. So if there's something that you all want to hear about in these kinds of lectures or discussions, let us know. If it's a gut health thing, if it's whatever it might be, it doesn't matter. Autoimmune disease, things of that nature, hormone balancing, whatever. We get all kinds of things that proper blood sugar regulation. What are tools to be helping that? Like, there's all kinds of topics that exist out there that are important for people. So let us know some things, and we'll try to work with that and come up with some material that is going to be beneficial and help other people. And I'll be honest, please share this. I don't care about this with being just for patients of restorative or people that are closely connected to the restorative. Share it with the community, share it with other people, let them know. I know that this particular platform, I can host up to 250. There was 80 registered tonight. Somehow we only had 15 come on. So that's fine. It's been awesome. So share it with other people. I'm all for that. Everybody's talking about those Easter eggs. I've got a couple right here that I was stacking on, but I felt bad. So I'm going to probably put them away now. It's getting too close to bedtime, and I don't want to alter my sleep patterns because I eat too close to bed. My Oura ring, the O-ring wouldn't like that. So tell me what.
Was this do as I say, not as I do? Is that what you're telling me, huh?
I practice what I preach.
There you go. Okay. God bless everybody. Have a blessed Easter as well, too.
Love y'all.
Have a good one.
Thanks.